What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and the time is finally here for Dragonlance. Hope you all are excited. I'm excited. Thank you to Wizards of the Coast for sending me the copies of the book. There's another one back there. And I want to get into the review on this book a little bit differently because, fortunately, I have a bit of time before the book actually launches. And so rather than like rushing through the whole thing and trying to get a review out as quickly as possible, I want to be able to take my time and really kind of critically think about the elements of this book. And so starting up, kind of the thing that I think a lot of people were really excited about, I know I was, the Lunar Sorcerer. So this is in the character creation chapter of the book, exactly for those of you following along, on page 34 of the Dragonlance book, Lunar Sorcery. So this is a sorcerer subclass, in case you didn't know, based on the moon. And I'm going to break down each feature of this class, what I think about it, the additional spells that it gets, and kind of the way I used to break down subclasses, the way I think that you could utilize them in your game, how DMs could run for them, etc., etc. So let's start off with first level. So you get the Lunar Embodiment class feature, which is your additional spells. So they did something interesting in that you can have different phases of the moon be what channels your power. And so you have a different spell list based on the phase of the moon, but you don't just pick one and then you're done. You can actually change it at the end of a long rest. You can be under the influence of a new phase of the moon. So at first level, if you go with the full moon, you get the shield spell, new moon, ray of sickness, and crescent moon, color spray. These are decent, and I think it kind of starts to set up the theme of each one, in that the full moon tends to be like protective and what you would consider good, and then the new moon is darkness and necromancy and evil, and then the crescent moon is very much crowd control-y, illusory, that kind of thing. Additionally, at first level, you gain the ability to cast when at the end of a long rest, you choose your new moon phase, or you keep the same one. Once per day, you can cast the first level spell that you get as a result of the phase of the moon that you're under for free. No spell slots. And then once you've done it, you can't cast it again in that way. It does specify that language, which I like, because then that indicates you could use a spell slot to cast it. Unlike some of the older things where it's like, nope, you cast it once and you can never cast it again. So I do like that. Also, Moon Fire, you know the Sacred Flame spell. But when you cast a spell, you can target one creature as normal or two creatures within 5 feet of each other, which is pretty cool utility. Then at third level, you gain additional spells due to your moon phase of Lesser Restoration for full moon. New moon is Blindness, Deafness, and the crescent moon is Alter Self, keeping the theme alive in terms of where each of those 3 moons land. And then at 5th level, we just keep on rolling with the full moon getting Dispel Magic, the new moon getting Vampiric Touch, and the crescent moon getting Phantom Steed. Phantom Steed is an interesting one. I'm not mad about it. And, you know, I guess you are evoking a not real steed, so that kind of makes sense. The other two obviously land right where you kind of expect them to in terms of the theme that they're going with each of the stages of the moon. Okay, and then at 6th level, you get 2 more class features. The first one is Lunar Boons. Once again, depending on the phase of the moon that you are currently under, there are different schools of magic that are associated with each moon phase. So with the full moon, you have Abjuration and Divination. With the new moon, you have Evocation and Necromancy. And lastly, with the crescent moon, you have Transmutation and Divination magic. And what happens with those schools is when you utilize meta magic to alter a spell that's under that school that matches the phase that you're in, it costs 1 fewer spell sorcery point, minimum of 1. No, minimum 0. Minimum 0. Don't know why they would put that. You typically minimum 1 indicates, I guess if there was something else that gave it for free, you could have somebody argue that it's -1, therefore they gain sorcery point. Do I just not play with people that are that like up their own butt about the game? Like, I can't even imagine somebody trying to argue that, like, well, I already get to do this for free, and since it costs one less, then it's -1, so I gain a sorcery point when I quicken this spell. No, you don't, because you made them take the time to put minimum 0 in this book. So anyway, Lunar Boons, that's how that functions. And then Waxing and Waning. This is basically an upgrade of the first level ability where you pick your the phase of the moon that you're under, where you can, as a bonus action, change. You have to spend 1 sorcery point, and you can change what phase of the moon you're currently drawing your power from, which is pretty cool. And then additionally, you can cast the first level spell from from each phase of the moon for free, as opposed to just one. So, but it has to match the one that you're currently under. Basically, you can cast each of Shield, Ray of Sickness, and Alter Self. You can cast each of those one time for free per long rest, but you have to be drawing on the phase of the moon that it's associated with, if that makes sense. So I can cast Shield one time, and then if I switch to New Moon, then I can cast Ray of Sickness, but then I can't switch back to Full Moon and cast Shield because I already did it that day. But I could switch to Crescent Moon and then cast Alter Self. Makes sense? Each of those one time per day, and then you can use spell slots the rest of the time. Then at 7th level, you gain more spells. Death Ward for the Full Moon, Confusion for New Moon, and Hallucinatory Terrain for the Crescent. I will say Death Ward and Hallucinatory Terrain make sense. Confusion is a little odd for me personally, because, you know, it's just evocation, necromancy, that kind of thing. And confusion just thematically, at least in my brain, doesn't fit that well. I think from a balance standpoint, you want to have some level of like crowd control and mind altering and not just damage. But honestly, that I saw that and was like, that doesn't match the 3 above it. I guess you could argue blindness, deafness doesn't, but that just seems like an offensive crowd control spell, if that makes sense. An offensive debuff, as opposed to confusion seems less intense than blindness, deafness. I don't know. Am I being weird? Let me know down in the comments if you maybe I just need to calm down about it. Then at 9th level, you get for Full Moon Rary's Telepathic Bond. For New Moon, you get Hold Monster, and for Crescent Moon, you get Mislead. Once again, thematically fine. Hold Monster, once again, it kind of feels like you were really intense as the New Moon, and then you just kind of dipped a little bit there at the end. But that's just my opinion. Overall, the spells are good. I think the Full Moon phase keeps its theme really strong throughout, and the Crescent Moon is decent. It just has less of a strong theme, I guess, than the Full Moon. And before we continue, I don't know if you're aware, but we are on the path to 10,000 subscribers. We are getting there very quickly, and it's great. And as soon as we hit that point, I'm going to buy one of you lovely subscribers anything you want off the DM's Guild or D&D Beyond in the form of single book, no bundles. I see you. So yeah, once we hit that point, I'm going to do a drawing and buy one of you all a book of your choosing. So be sure to subscribe down below and tell other people about the videos. They might like them. If you have people that are excited about Dragonlance, point them this way. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and on with the video. Okay, at 14th level, you get Lunar Empowerment. Where basically, once again, based on the phase of the moon that you're channeling, you have a thing that you can do. So Full Moon, as a bonus action, you can emit bright light within a 10-foot radius emitting from you, and then dim light for 10 feet beyond that. And additionally, yourself and anyone else of your choice within the bright light have advantage on investigation and perception checks while in the bright light with you. So that's good, decent. Provides some decent utility. With New Moon, you have advantage on stealth checks, and while you're entirely in darkness, attack rolls against you have disadvantage, which can offset some things like dark vision, superior dark vision, devil's sight, where yeah, you can see me, but I'm still entirely in darkness, so you have disadvantage, which is a pretty cool counter, I guess, to certain types of enemies. And then lastly, with the Crescent Moon, you have resistance to necrotic and radiant damage. Yeah, it's fine. It's okay. Okay, and then the capstone 18th level is Lunar Phenomenon. I'm just going to read these because they are kind of wordy. So for the full moon, you radiate moonlight for a moment. Each creature of your choice within 30 feet of you must succeed on a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC or be blinded until the end of its next turn. In addition, one creature in the area of your choice gains 3d8 hit points. That's pretty good. New moon, you momentarily emanate gloom. Each creature of your choice within 30 feet of you must succeed on a dexterity saving throw against your spell save DC or take 3d10 necrotic damage and have its speed reduced to 0 until the end of its next turn. In addition, you become invisible until the end of your next turn or until immediately after you make an attack roll or cast a spell. Once again, these are all bonus actions. I neglected to mention bonus actions, all of these. Crescent moon. You can magically teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 60 feet of yourself. You can bring along one willing creature you can see within 5 feet. That creature teleports to an unoccupied space within 5 feet of you. In addition, you and that creature gain resistance to all damage until the start of your next turn. Once you use one of these bonus action benefits, you can't use that benefit again until you finish a long rest, unless you spend 5 sorcery points to do so. Now, it also points out for the Lunar Phenomenon, you can do this as a bonus action. Alternatively, as part of the bonus action that you use to change your lunar phase during waxing and waning, you can immediately use the power of the lunar phase you are entering. An important wording at the tail end of this. Once you use one of these benefits, you can't use that benefit again. So you can use all 3 of these during a long rest, which is pretty cool. In fact, it's pretty potent. It's 18th level. It should be potent. So, what do I think of Lunar Sorcery? It's fine. I don't think it's going to satisfy Dragonlance hardcore nerds. Just because the fact that you get to pick and choose rather than actually being affected by the moons, I think is not going to satisfy a lot of people. And I agree that it kind of would have been cool. I talked about this in a previous video where they were previewing the Lunar Sorcerer. And I agree it would be neat to have a subclass that was like based off of powers outside of your control, but then play a Warlock. But no, at the end of the day, I don't totally hate the idea of being able to choose agency to the player. It makes it a fun subclass to pick. Now, I think that this subclass, once again, I haven't played it yet. I haven't gotten on table. Just based on reading this is a S tier sorcerer subclass if you are multi-classing from a melee fighter, like a Hexblade or a Paladin, or even a fighter with high charisma or barbarian with high charisma, because you can cast shield for free once per long rest. All the time. That's great. And you have shield as part of your spell list. So whatever spell slots you're taking. So in my mind, like if you were to do, it couldn't be a Hexblade because you have to get your Pact of the Blade for that to be really effective. So if you were to do a 2-level fighter dip to get the action surge and second wind, and then you just went straight sorcerer after that point, this could be pretty potent, I think. Once again, I need to, and it just depends on whether or not you want to get the capstone, but let me break down how this could be beneficial for a melee fighter. So, like I said, shield, really good. Blindness, deafness, also very good. Vampiric touch, if you're in melee range a lot, very, very good. But furthermore, the Lunar Empowerment, being able to, while entirely in darkness, things have disadvantage on attacks against you. So being able to cast darkness, which is on the sorcerer spell list, being able to cast that and then just guarantee that even if something has Devil's Sight, they're still not going to be able to hit you without swinging with disadvantage, is really good for a melee character to have. And additionally, all 3 of these Lunar Phenomenon, in my opinion, are pretty great for melee fighters. For one creature of your choice can include yourself. So you can self-heal with the full moon Lunar Phenomenon, where you cast Bright Light, blind the enemy that you're fighting, and heal yourself 3d8 hit points. With the New Moon, you can just deal a ton of damage against a creature and reduce their speed to 0 as a bonus action. So it's like a preemptive Sentinel opportunity attack where you just tell them, no, you cannot run. And then you're invisible. So that's also really good. And then the Crescent Moon, being able to teleport 60 feet and then have resistance to all damage. So like you teleport as a bonus action, start off a fight in Crescent Moon, teleport up 60 feet, bamf, you're right next to the enemy you want to fight. You have resistance to all damage. You could take the other melee fighter with you, just bamf up there. You both have resistance to all damage for that first round. Then, bonus action, switch to a different phase, and you could do New Moon, hit him with the damage, 3d10 necrotic damage, speed reduced to 0. Then you still have your attack to hit again. And then later on in the fight, if you're taking damage, bonus action, 3d8 points of healing. I mean, I think that this would be really good for a fighter. Obviously, you're sacrificing, if you're getting up to 18th level, you're sacrificing things like extra attack and things like that. So I don't know the viability of this at high level play. Once again, I'm not the optimizer. Just as I was reading those three things, I was like, if you were a melee fighter and you had this, that'd be crazy. Be really cool. And you know, you could be a sorcerer that just, you know, you gain proficiency with melee weapons and just be a sorcerer with a high strength or dex or whatever. But you know, the melee fighter scales based on its extra attack or things like sneak attack damage or smite. So I will say that maybe the longevity of it isn't there, but I will say that I think it would be really fun to play a melee sorcerer, the melee Lunar Sorcerer. So that's what I got. So for DMs out there that are running a game for Lunar Sorcerer, if you're running in Dragonlance, come back later because I got a lot of book to read for the adventure that's included. When I'll do a whole like running the adventure that's in this book, as well as a breakdown of the first chapter that's all about the world of Dragonlance, etc. But if you're just running in your homebrew world or a different world, they do give some like tips of if you're playing a Lunar Sorcerer in another setting like Eberron. Just one sentence blurb, so nothing extensive. But I think it would be really fun to play I want themes to matter in a campaign, if that makes sense. And so I would really love the idea of like something with lycanthropy associated with the Lunar Sorcerer. Maybe they are a lycanthrope or they're a werewolf hunter, and so they're really in tune with the moon. And that's why when they're in their full moon phase, their stuff is very protective, is because that's when they need it the most. And so I think running a Lunar Sorcerer werewolf hunter would be super cool and super thematically awesome. Obviously, running this with a Circle of Stars druid and a Twilight Domain cleric, all celestial stuff, would be fun just from a thematic standpoint. And Twilight Domain clerics are like, you know, a cheat code in a lot of games. So I think that would be really, really cool. But I mean, the big thing is establish with your player how much you want the moons to matter. Like I said, I think it would be really cool to play it where I don't have control and, you know, the moons are just doing their own thing. But in a world like Eberron, there's 12 moons. So probably at any given moment, there is at least one moon in a phase that I want to attune to. So maybe I'm attuning to different moons that are associated with the different planes. And so maybe that does something like the moon associated with the plane of fire is full. So if I go full moon phase, then maybe it's not radiant damage that my Lunar Boon does. Maybe it's fire damage. And additionally, I think another really cool plot hook could be maybe if you have multiple moons, one of them getting destroyed or being blacked out, and maybe that locks off one of the phases of the moon for a time, for an adventure. Obviously, you'd want your players buy-in about, is it okay if I do story beats that directly affect your class abilities, because some people are not going to be down with that. So talk to your players, but I think that would be a really cool, like, all of a sudden you can't do full moon stuff because maybe the only moon of this world that actually gets into a full moon phase, because the way that the angles of the sun, whatever, is blocked out or destroyed or has been taken to another plane of existence or whatever, and you have to go get it back. I think that could be really cool. But let me know what you think down below. Thank you all so much for watching. Once again, big thank you to Wizard of the Coast for sending me the book. Stay tuned for more Dragonlance content coming this week and next week. And thank you all so much for watching. I've been Eric, and I'll see you next time.